Hello YouTubers and all those who happen to watch. This is a video response to Jillpoothree. Pretty much showing off our video game controllers, anything unique, anything special, save them for last. Lather, rinse, repeat, touch my nipples very dirtily. So, okay, first controller I want to show off. Now this is stuff you have in your collection, so open tag, go attach to his video and all that nature and all that beautiful stuff. So, okay, the first controller I want to show off is actually the Gem Stick, which was pretty much an accessory for the Atari 2600. Pretty damn good controller, I'd have to say so. When I got this with my Atari 2600, when I bought it in this lot back in the day, it was a pretty damn good joystick. I was surprised. It felt nice. I mean, I'm not hugely favoritized towards, the stiff controls of an Atari 2600 controller, but it was definitely a darn good controller to use, or at least this brand is pretty good. So if you ever find this in the wild, take a chance on it. I'd say you definitely enjoy it. It feels a little bit more looser than the Atari 2600 anyway. So, okay, we're moving on. The next controller I have, which is a standard if you own a PS3, is the PlayStation 3 controller. I have a silicone on here which helps with grip and helps protect the plastic on the controller, so it reduces the wear and tear I put on the device or the controller, and it isn't so bad. Next I have here is the Xbox 360 controller. Again, these are pretty common controllers. This is the Gears of War 3 edition. I have the battery pack, so it doesn't really match too much, but yeah, pretty nice controller. Works great. Has that new, D-pad on there, so... Oh, yeah. Anyway. Got the next thing here, which is, of course, the herpaderp of all controllers, as I try to scavenge it from this heap of controllers, is the Wii remote with the nunchuck. Interesting controller, I definitely say, for today's standpoint. It's not by any means the greatest control in the world. Is it interesting? I'd say yes. Again, yeah, I mean, it's a good responsive controller, but again, it isn't my favorite. I definitely say it's a little bit underneath the radar when it comes to its usefulness, I'd say. Put that over as I drop like 50 million things, but anyway, an accessory for that Wiimote, of course, is the Control Pad Pro, or in this case a super duper controller that kind of looks like a PlayStation 2 controller on acid. Pretty darn good. It's comfortable. It's feels like some controller had a baby and this was the byproduct of it. Again, pretty decent controller. The next one here I'd have to say is the bastard child controller of the Xbox 360. It is by any means not that great, and the design of it is pretty flawed. I mean, the idea was on paper seemed okay, but again, that is the Mad Catz arcade stick controller. I probably butchered the name, but as you can see right there, it's really, it had a lot of good ideas, but the outcome of it wasn't very good. I mean, it looks kind of cool, but then you start using it and you're like, oh, okay, how to it's kind of awkward to control, especially if you're trying to, I mean, you won't be able to play Call of Duty on this controller at all. I mean, if you can physically get a high KD ratio with this controller, you're a god. That's all I can say. I tried doing it for a laugh, did not work out too well. So, moving on. Next controller here I actually got from Alec John. This is the Sega Genesis controller he hand painted for me, and it's a sort of a little sentimental gift, which is pretty awesome. He hand painted it. But again, pretty awesome. Sega Genesis controller is a big and lovely controller, very simple at the same time, very diverse. Very shallow and pedantic. Yes. So, next controller I want to show up here is a very underlooked controller, I feel, anyway, and that is the GameCube controller. GameCube. Anyway, the GameCube controller. I liked the controller. I thought it was pretty comfortable. The pressure-sensitive buttons here are pretty nice. I mean, again, it's a good controller. I don't see it as being bad. A lot of people with big fingers say it's the worst controller in the world. It's because you have big fingers. I mean, it doesn't mean the controller is bad. It just means you have big fingers. I got long fingers, but you don't. So, okay, moving on tenderly. We got the... This is actually a pretty darn good controller. This is a Verge controller that was a brand for Circuit City for a while. This was a kiddies version because it's kind of small, but it's actually a pretty darn responsive and comfortable controller, even though it's small and tiny. My hands go like, you know, that's how big my hands are compared to that controller. This controller is pretty tiny, you know, it's practically for kiddos, but again, paid $3 for it when it was on clearance when Circuit City was going out of business. You get the drill. The next controller here I got is actually for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and this is the QuickShot 12. And I got that boxed a while back, a long while back of course. Pretty darn interesting and unique. Works pretty well. Where is it? The other version I have is this one, which is the QuickShot, I can't remember the exact number, but this is a different one. It works just as good. It's very, very stiff, like it. But again, if you are into the the tight controls like the Atari 2600, this is definitely a controller for you. If you're into that when it comes to arcade C-style games with a Nintendo. But this one's okay. Didn't pay too much for this one at all either. The next controller, which I gotta get it untangled a little bit from the heap of controllers of Doom, is the Dogbone controller for the. It was a Model 2 Nintendo controller. A lot of people like it. I think it's interesting. I need to clean it up a bit inside because it's not very responsive, but the design was kind of cool. The next controller here, which is actually quite unique, is, as I pull it from the gates of hell, is this is the Split Fish, which was for the PlayStation 3. The Split Fish controller, which was like a mouse and a gamepad rolled into one. And I thought this one was pretty unique. You know, you fire here, you shoot here. It was, a lot of people were complaining about the milliseconds being off, didn't fire super accurate as they would want it to. And, you know, I could see some of the valid points behind that, but past that, I thought it was a decent controller slash mouse majigger. And, again, was not a bad device, I'd have to say. On top of it, it has rapid fire. Anyway, moving on. The next gun controller here, which I actually kind of like it, which is from Naki. The only problem is it doesn't work, or it doesn't work on my TV. And this is for the PlayStation 2, which was supposed to be for firing, for shooters and all that. But again, no luck. Does not work, or at least it does not work for my console over there. It's disappointing. The next one here, a lot of people say this is a angry video game nerd-esque style controller, which again, you know, it doesn't matter kind of scenario. I got this like a long time ago, and I recently just pulled it out, dusted off, used it, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, I see you're influenced by the angry video game nerd." It's like, no, I bought this a long time ago because my controller did not work, and this one does very well. So, you know, it has that little decal on top of it, so it doesn't make it the best controller in the world, but, you know, it just looks kind of cool. The next controller I have here is an Xbox controller, S model. Pretty good damn controller, solid as a snake. Next is the ColecoVision controller. Pretty darn nice, pretty awesome. Little number pad thingies there, pressure sides here, stiff but workable movements, sticky, and pretty darn good controller. It's somewhat short, so you have to play really close to the console with it. The next controller I got here is the N64 controller. I like the controller to a degree. I mean, I see some points where people argue that it's not a very good controller. At the same time, I think it's pretty darn universal. You can play it like that, play it like that. It was a very unisex of style of controller, I'd say. It was an interesting concept. It was not the greatest controller, but it was good. forgetting anything? Of course, a gem of a controller, which is the Turbo Pad for TurboGrafx 16. Pretty darn awesome. Very responsive gamepad. I've got a couple in my collection, one sitting over there. And it's, again, a very awesome controller. I enjoy it, the design, the feel of it. It's big enough, you know, plenty of room. The turbo feature in there, a very good controller. Though the earlier versions obviously did not have the turbo features because, you know. So, the next one here is obviously a Super Nintendo controller. You guys have seen many of those. Many of you guys have seen a Dreamcast controller, as I did through the Valley of the Shadow of Death over here. My ASCII-ware gamepad, pretty awesome brand, pretty awesome controller. Probably the best for the Super Nintendo, exception of course a couple games are not supportable with it. The PlayStation 2 version of the Split Fish controller. Again, a very universally interesting design. It's comfortable to a degree, and it works for what it is. But again, works well. I got a tennis paddle for the Atari 2600. See what I mean? It's all tangled right now. So again, it's pretty darn interesting. It's just like the driving paddle. So. But as I remember correctly, it's connected to two. I am correct. Two. See again, I gotta untangle these before I do videos in the future. But of course, I did stockpile these as I was recording. So. And there we go. Sorry about all this crap. So, as you can see right here, it has two paddle controllers attached to one, which is plugged into one slot, which was actually quite cool. So you can play Pong like a boss, as you can see right there. Pretty awesome. This was the Gemini video game system controller, which I thought this was actually a pretty darn good controller. Very responsive. I actually use this with the Atari 2600 when I ever play it, because it works so darn responsive. The bottom thing here I have no hope for. I don't bother with that. But this part, which I actually put a pencil grip on there for better comfort, because you know how the people go, play natural. That's okay. You get those little that scrape against your skin and it wears over time. I'll have some comfort. So I put that over that so that way it's nice and grip. It has a nice grip. It's soft. It's gooey. It doesn't hurt when you're using that. Get your thumb on there, and you just play the hell out of your games. Very responsive controller. I thought it was pretty darn good. If not, I think the Gemini worked a little bit better than the Atari 2600 console, which, you know, whatever, you know, pick and choose. And let's see what I got. Anything else? Of course, cannot forget this controller. Very awesome controller, which is the Sega Saturn controller. Very awesome controller. Thought it was great. Still think it is great. That nice clicky noise when you click the button down on the left and right shoulder buttons. Awesome D-pad. Start button's awesome. Very responsive controller. Thumbs up. So we're supposed to save the best for last when it comes to gamepads and all that nature. So without further ado, my crowning jewel, if not one of my favorite controllers, I think currently to date, is actually, and this is something I got very recently from a friend of mine, which is Bear, as well as Charlie recommended this, is the Sega Saturn 3D gamepad. I just think it looks cool, it is cool, the design is just so unique and wild, and, you know, my crowning jewel in my collection when it comes to controllers. And again, it's just really freaking cool looking. I like the design. The idea and concept is just, you know, it's big. It's pretty much the predecessor, or in this case, the granddaddy of the Sega Dreamcast. And even though a lot of people probably try to deny this until they look through Google, is actually the granddaddy of the original Xbox controller, which of course turned into, this feels like a digivolving session, doesn't it? Digivolve into, I need a life. Anyway, the Xbox 360 controller. So if we date all the way back, if it wasn't for this gamepad, you frag heads will not be able to play with this controller. So I guess that old school console wasn't so bad after all. Sorry, I like to throw a little low blow there once in a while, but don't take any offense. I play console games of modern age as well. But either way, without this, can't get this. A little bit of history there. I mean, some people already knew that. Some people are like, oh, that was useless information, but cool, you know, kind of thing. But the new standard in game control is so much true behind that, or so true behind that, of course. Tongue-tied and screwed up my words big time. But you can see that right there. It's so true of how it changed video game controllers. And I mean, there's some, don't get me wrong, there's other consoles that probably had that first, or had these ideas first, but first one that actually made it work. Even though it did not have a lot of support for the Sega Saturn games, it's still an awesome controller. And you know, the idea and the concept of this got carried on to today. Interesting news. This time I want to share all these controllers with you anyway. But yeah, I'm gonna put all these controllers away because I have a whole crap load of controllers on my bed right now. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and this was of course for Jillpoothree. So hopefully he'll attach this to his video, and you guys can check out his channel as well. So take it easy, folks. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, oh man, touch my dirty, ripe, delicious, rancid, and obscenely erect nipples.